Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hire Talent from Anywhere in the World webinar series from Deel. I'm your host, Luke Floyd. I am a senior account executive for mid-market in North America, and I'm happy to be excited to be handling this event specifically for Brazil. So today we're going to be talking how to hire talent in Brazil from anywhere in the world, and we have three different experts that I'm going to introduce to you now. So first, we have our country manager for Deel, Cristiano Soares.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure, Luke, to be here. Yeah, it's amazing to see how companies abroad it's hiring a lot in Brazil. It will be
Yes, and it's
amazing.
great to watch our expansion in Brazil and just the speed at which we all have been growing down there. Next, we have Tiago Vieira. He is an international law expert and particularly focuses in Brazil. Tiago, if you introduce yourself.
Hi guys, it's a pleasure to be here today. It's a pleasure to share with you some views regarding the legal aspects to hire talent in Brazil.
And finally, we're also joined by Ezekiel Applebaum. He is from Workana, and so he specializes on the talent aspect of Brazil.
Hi everyone, really nice to be here. I'm actually based in Argentina, but my team or I look over all of Latam, including Brazil. So happy to join and to share a few insights on how we see talents, particularly in Brazil.
You can advance to the next slide if you wouldn't mind for us. And then, so getting started with an agenda. Next slide. First, we're going to start with a quick country overview. So some basic facts about Brazil. That's where my use as a salesperson will expire, and I'll introduce an expert. So that's where we're going to talk about talent with Ezekiel. We'll then go to compliance, which is going to be under Tiago. And then I will wrap up things by giving you a quick preview of what it's like to make a hire in Brazil through Deel. Cristiano will be peppering his country experience as well throughout. So why don't we go ahead and kick it off? Next slide, please. So a little bit about Brazil. First, it's a very large population, 212 million. The capital city is Brasilia. The currency is the real, also abbreviated for our dollar sign or BRL. GDP, roughly 6,800 USD in 2020. Officially speak Portuguese. About 5% of Brazilians state that they speak English. They are on a monthly payroll cycle in our GMT -3 on their time zone. Next slide. So that being said, let me hand it over to Ezekiel. If you wouldn't mind diving into some of the talent aspects of Brazil in particular.
Sure. So the idea here is to share a few insights. We've been, particularly from Workana, we've been working with Brazilian talent on the past 10 years. So Workana is the largest freelance platform in Latin America, and more or less 40 or 50% of our talent pool is based in Brazil. So during these years, we learned a few interesting things that we wanted to share. So if you're thinking on hiring talent, Brazilian talent from abroad, I think these are a few things that probably some of them won't show up in Wikipedia or other places. So that's the idea that we want to share today. So in Brazil, due to its really big population, when we see numbers, we see abundant and really qualified population, really qualified talent, the largest population of Java developers in the world. And one thing that I really want to stress out is particularly if you are a startup or if you are a corporation looking for people that are alumni for big startups, Brazil has already 21 unicorns with a lot of people that already work there and want to move forward. So that's a really interesting place to start as a company to look for. Probably in the part of qualified, the big pending or the biggest spending is what you saw in the past slide on English proficiency, where probably there's a probably step up in the few years, but you still have plenty of people that speak really good English. in terms
Hey,
of
Ezekiel, let me interrupt you for a second. I have a quick question. So one
sure.
thing that I've noticed, even since starting a deal, I've been at Deal for about a year. It seems like the demand for talent in Brazil has increased. It's become even more competitive recently. Is that qualified talent pool was always there, or do you find that Brazil is actually increasing its capacity for this tech talent and type of abundant and qualified talent you're mentioning?
So two things there. One of them I probably have it in another slide, but the first one is that after the pandemic, it started really to grow as water has risen in all the world, and obviously, of course, in Brazil as well. And with a large population, you see those numbers going up quickly. But also, I will answer it now, but it's in the other slide where you see Brazil has a really sparse population, so really big but really sparse. So it's a huge country, the 5th country in the world. And since remote talent started to grow a lot, we started seeing talent pools or talent nodes arising in other places, far away from Sao Paulo, far away from Brasilia or other places, so far up in the north or other places where maybe before people were forced to move to the big cities to work on those companies. So that's I think those are the two main reasons. So just going back to the previous one, to the previous slide there. So the other really good thing is in terms of time zone. So you have a really good time zone both with East and West Coast. Pretty easy for Europe as well. So it's and for the rest of Latam, so it's a good time zone as well as Argentina and other countries. And yeah, like it's a as most of Latam countries, people are used to chaos and hectic and crazy day to days and situations. So talent is malleable and is flexible. So that's really really interesting. Going to the next one. So a few of the best places where you want to see on the resumes, or at least a few of where we saw in the rankings. So in the public states, the biggest public universities for the biggest states, so São Paulo, Campinas, Rio de Janeiro, you have really in Brazil the exams to go into university are extremely hard and extremely high standards. So it's pretty hectic when people finish secondary school and want to go into university. To go into the best ones, it's extremely difficult. So you have a really good filter over there. And then you have the Getulio Vargas and a few others, the Universidad Católica, that are the private ones that are the best of the best. And they probably are in the best of LATAM. So next one, please. There. So we did a report with over 15,000 answers at the finishing of 2021, and these are the most demanded skills from Brazilian talent on our platform. So IT and development, that's a world thing. It's not only at Workana, and particularly everything that has to do with design and multimedia, copywriting and content, salespeople, and others for marketing. This is not 1/4 each, so a little bit probably IT and development is probably in the 30 or 35 or 40% on this pie. But these are the 4 most big categories that we see that are being demanded from abroad. Here, Cristiano, I don't know if you want to go a little bit deeper on this info from Deel.
Yeah, that's amazing because we just launched recently Deel market rate insights that every client over the world can just go there and check how much, if you have any doubts, how much I can pay to engineers in Brazil. For engineers in Brazil, you can just go there. I guess that Luke will show it later. We can just go there and check the rates, the range as well of the salaries, and that is amazing because Brazil is growing a lot in terms of search for professionals locally, because with our actual currency, that it's something like 5 times for $1. You can hire the best engineer in a much better price that you used to hire in US or Europe. Sometimes it's almost half of the price and the same quality or even better. If you look at here, you have some range of sales representative, SDRs, for example, engineers, account executives, and also designers. Yeah, and all this rate range, yeah, they are set up in Brazilian reais. So we can just divide it by 5, and you have the annual cost in dollar as well. So it's amazing to check it out. Yeah, I really recommend that everyone that just watching us right now, that go there. Yeah, look, will send you links and show everything, and you can check every salary range and decide if it's the best way in Brazil, if the best place to hire or not.
Yeah, we'll definitely hop into it when we show the platform. One thing I'd like to ask Ezekiel is if you notice there is quite a difference in ranges. You're talking about the abundant talent, and there is quite a bit of difference in terms of low paying and high paying. So it's clear that there is some high level talent, right, to be had at quite a premium if it's worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely, and usually, so the highest ranges on each range, usually you will have, for example, if you are talking about an engineer, probably the higher end, it's probably going to be someone that studied IT at university, and it's not maybe someone that learned from other places. You will have the best English speakers on the higher end, and maybe the more on the lower end, you have people that probably can communicate and write, but won't be as proficient as the other ones. So yeah, probably when you look on the higher end, on the higher ranges, it's as Cristiano said, you will have the most comparable talent to compare with a US based developer or everything. That's probably the number you should look at. That it's still going to be probably 30 or 40% less than in the US or Europe, but it will be someone that is really senior, that has English proficiency, and that is probably really ready to plug and play and start developing for a US company or startup.
So I think the important thing to call out there is, even though Deel can show you, low, median, and high, we can give you numbers. That doesn't put context into the talent need. That doesn't necessarily put context into English proficiency. This is basically effectively based on title and years of experience. So there's a lot of other quantifications or a lot of other attributes that might be interesting to your point about like English proficiency that might increase the salary requirements because they are then more desirable to North American teams.
Definitely. Yep. You probably can see up to, I'd say, like a 30% spike on a price for someone that is really proficient in English. So next one, I think it's the last one. No, I have two more. So how to find talent. You have really, really good talent marketplaces, particularly for freelancers in Brazil. Workana, you have some others. Top universities, you can go back to this presentation and see the list that we gave you. There you have probably the best candidates. And then, of course, like in everywhere else in the world, both LinkedIn, that the Brazilian community is really, really used to using it, both for sales, but for also recruiting and everything in the middle. It's something that has a really specific weight in Brazil. And referrals as well, as always, to find the best talent. And I probably would add alumni from unicorns. That's probably, if I'm a hiring manager from abroad, definitely I search for the best or for all Brazilian unicorns and see what managers or what talent has already been 2-3 years over there, and I can get for my company that I'm sure they would be world class. And the last one, so these ones are the ones I said probably are not going to be on Wikipedia. So I talked about the last one, about the big and sparse country. You have people all over the country. In the middle, the middle one is really important in Brazil, much more than in other places. So just, and probably then Thiago can speak a little bit more, but not only talking about what's correct or not. So I think everyone is okay and knows and has agreed that we need a diverse workplace. But particularly in Brazil, you have really strict rules and sanctions on the other hand to maintain like those diverse workplaces. So regarding gender, color, religion, people with disabilities or whatever, we actually at Workana have a lot of partners in Brazil that they look for to place people with disabilities, people in the trans community, and other smaller groups. So we have partnerships with them, and we try to place freelancers from their talent pools, and that's something that Brazilian companies need. So it's something really interesting in the workplace. And then, of course, what Cristiano said in terms of currency, we are currently in a moment in time, probably in a process where the Brazilian real is getting each time is losing value. So this is probably going something similar. It's not as bad as in Argentina. Probably that is for another talk. But yeah, you have a losing value, a currency that is losing value, and that is going to make even more attractive this talent for companies abroad, right?
Yeah, that's a really great summary, I think, Ezekiel, of the talent and its possibilities in Brazil. A couple of key takeaways that I have before we transitioned over. You can go ahead and go to the next slide before we transition over to Tiago. Number one is the part about, diversity, equity, inclusion, what your workplace has to look like, all these various classes. That's one of the benefits of using an employer of record. This is something that Tiago will get into with the compliance of setting up your own entity versus employer of record. There's a lot of those country-specific requirements that employer records are familiar with and have to abide by, and can. That's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to things you would need to learn if you launched your own entity. And each jurisdiction obviously has its own. The second takeaway that I have from your portion is that some people, especially on referrals, are a really good option. If, let's say, a director of engineering or a VP of engineering, one of your leaders in your organization, if you're watching this, maybe has those connections. They just have been hesitant to hire abroad because of maybe some of the hurdles. That's a possibility now, and referrals are strong. However, if you don't have the local networks, that's where teams like Ezekiel can come in and help you build out those local networks so you can find the talent to get running, up and running. And Deel is just the back engine that makes it all happen so that there's less compliance hurdles to jump through. So that being a great segue, let me hand it over to Tiago to talk with us about compliance for employees and contractors in Brazil.
Perfect. Thank you, Luke. So I will start talking about the hiring compliance in Brazil with those main. Is very important to know this main difference between two categories we have in Brazil. So we have the employee, what we also call CLT. So it's a very common sentence that you can hear from contractors or employees when you try to hire them. So employee is an individual who provides a service of a non-eventual nature. Okay, this is very important because non-eventual in Brazil, under Brazilian labor laws, it means that the employee will receive a salary and he is under subordination. This is very important, okay? So it means that he works all days and all the time to a single entity, to a single company. So this is the nature of an employee under the Brazilian labor law. We also have another figure, which is the contractor. We also call them PJ or PJ, which is a company of a single person that will provide services to another company. The rule here is very clear. In the work provided, there cannot be elements that characterize an employment relationship, which can be subordination, personality, habituality, and onerousness. So, which means that you should be aware here because there are some cautions you need to take care of to avoid misclassification of the contract. Okay, this is really important. Next slide, please. So here I brought a simulation, okay, regarding the most common salary between developer community in Brazil, which is for the junior developers or the mid-career developers. They used to receive 10,000 reais, which corresponds to $2,000. And in this case, if you hire an employee in Brazil and you pay him with 10,000 reais, actually he will receive 2,500 less because this will be paid to the government. Okay, so we have here a simulation in the payslip. Today, the minimum wage in Brazil is very low, is 1,000 reais, sorry, which is in dollars the equivalent to $2,000. Okay, 200, sorry.
$200.
Yes. Next slide, please. So, and if you pay, so this is one that is a bit unfair, okay? Because if you pay 10,000 reais to an employee, which means that the employer has some costs, he will pay, the company will pay 2,000 reais more than the salary, okay? So basically, the employee will receive 2,000 less, and the employer will pay 2,000 more. So that's why sometimes it's not so attractive to hire employees in Brazil. And if you talk with some developers and other talents in Brazil, they will usually ask you to be under a contractor agreement and not under the employment agreement, just because this, because the high taxes and the high employer cost is very high, is really, really high.
Quick
Next
note
slide.
there, Tiago.
Yeah.
Employees must be paid in their local currency, right? So you can't pay an employee in USD, unfortunately, right? So employees are paid in reais.
Exactly. That's it. So we also have another thing that we should be aware of when we are hiring employees under the labor law in Brazil, because we have some mandatory benefits. Okay, health insurance, social security. We have some kind of worker compensation in Brazil, which we call FGTS, which is mandatory as well. We have meal voucher. Meal voucher is not mandatory, okay, but 90% of tech company in Brazil pays this kind of benefits, okay? We also have the transportation voucher, which is also not mandatory, but again, the majority of tech companies in Brazil are paying this kind of benefits. We also have the 13th salary, which is the end of year bonus, also known as Christmas bonus. You have to pay in the end of the year, and is also mandatory under Brazilian laws. Next. Also, we have statutory holidays. So we need to pay when you're hiring employees in Brazil. We have to pay 30 days paid time, okay, a year. We also have 13 national holidays, a total of 15 days, and 8 regional holidays, okay? We also have the contracts must be in English, in Portuguese or English, and can be bilingual, okay? Another thing that is important is that if you want this agreement to be enforceable under Brazilian law, it should be also in Portuguese, okay? So this is also a good observation. They must be in writing and signed by both parties. This is very clear. We also have a probation period, which can be 3 months. So you can test the employee for 3 months. And if it didn't work out, you can fire him, and there's no big deal. There's no big implications in this probation period, okay? So this is what the labor Brazilian law says. We also have the working hours and overtime. So the standard working hours in Brazil are 8 hours per day or 40 hours per week. The standard work week is from Monday to Friday. Employees can also work for 8 hours per day and 44 hours per week from Monday to Saturday, with 4 hours on Saturdays. This can be agreed between the employee and the company. The extra hours, and if you work, so if you work after the working time, the time that I told before, and also on holidays, the employee has the right to receive these extra hours. He must be paid on these extra hours he will work. We also have night hours in Brazil, which will lead to an extra payment. The night hours in Brazil is considered from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So if the employee works in this range, you have to pay what we call night hours in Brazil. We also have some kind of extra pay if the employee works under a regime that we call emergency or dirty, which can be very common in tech companies, like to give support to customers or this kind of thing. So this is another thing that we need to be aware and need to take care of this, okay? Next. We also have those bonus that I already told before. So we have the 13th salary, which is a holiday allowance each year that equals to 1 month salary. It can be paid out in 2 installments at the end of the year, so half in November and half in December. We also have vacation bonus that employees are entitled. So after 1 year of employment, he can receive a vacation bonus, which is equal to 30% of this month's salary and paid out at the time that vacation is taken. We also have the maternity, paternity, and sick leave, and also marriage and bereavement. Termination requirements for employees in Brazil. So terminations in Brazil can be complex. There is at will termination in Brazil for employers, except for certain employees. So let's say that you have a pregnant employee or some employee that suffered an accident at work, you cannot fire him, okay? So this is some termination requirements that you also need to be aware of this. The notice period is the minimum is 1 month, and it can increase according to the length of the employment, the agreements, okay? The time that the employee is working for the company. In Brazil, if employees are terminated without default cause that we call, you are firing someone by no reason, let's say this, employees are entitled to a balanced salary, unused holiday payouts, also the proportional 13th salary, and a fine that can be imposed that is 40% of the worker compensation fund that was paid during the employment. And this can be a very high amount depending on the salary and other circumstances. So another thing that you must be aware is that you can only hire employees in Brazil if you have an incorporated company or at least a subsidiary in Brazil, okay? And to incorporate a company or open a subsidiary in Brazil is not so easy. This will require you have a company director, which needs to have a Brazilian ID. So the director has to be Brazilian or at least have a Brazilian ID. And you also will you also have to pass through some kind of complex procedure in the central bank approval. Okay, so this is the procedure to open a company in Brazil. And you have an alternative, which is the Deel EOR solution. I will ask Cristiano to help me explain better about this Deel EOR, Cristiano.
Amazing. I think that Thiago you just explain everything that could be a risk, in terms to hire employee in Brazil, and that's why we have Deel EOR, because you just assume everything. So you don't need to take care about 13 salaries, about holidays, about FGTS, about nothing. We just can hire these people behind in behalf of our client, and just with our accounting, with our legal team, we can just take care about all legal responsibility, compliance, onboarding, payroll, employees, because most companies don't know, but we need to play the payroll on the right date, otherwise you can have some penalties also. So payroll, HR, admin, offboarding, legal follow-up. That means that with Deel EOR, we just will have a relationship with your executive team or CSM manager, and we will take care about everything. So we will keep all responsibility under our hands, and to guarantee that your employee is being well in under the Brazilian law, labor law as well, and get paid in the right way and with all mandatory benefits covered by Deel as well. So if you want to hire someone in Brazil, has CLT, as you said, I mean that through Deel EOR, it's much faster. At the end, could be also cheaper because you don't need to open a subsidiary in Brazil or entity in Brazil, and also you'll be with much less compliance on your side because you take care about all operations, and to operate an EOR, a CLT in Brazil, it's quite hard, It's a lot of things that accounting, legal have to do monthly to guarantee that we are under the law. So if you guys didn't are thinking to hire someone in Brazil, please just reach out to Luki and he can explain price and everything.
Yeah, exactly, Cristiano. It's not the right option in all circumstances, right, to use an EOR. However, an EOR is great, especially if you don't have a ton of experience in the location yet. We see a couple of different scenarios, and you can go to the next slide so I don't get too lost. Before we get into contractors, we see a couple of different scenarios. Sometimes companies want to test the market. They want to see what it's like in Brazil. So let's just do a couple of hires. That's a lot of work to set up an entity for, right? So that's where folks use us, or they might use a Deel EOR long-term, as in, I know I'm going to be in Latin America long-term. I know it's going to take me a while to set up my Brazilian entity. While I'm doing that, let me secure my key talent right now. And then once my entity is ready, transfer them over. So there's a couple of different options for strategies for employees, but the point being, it's not exactly cut and dry like it is with contractors. So Tiago, take it away.
Yeah, so contractors can be also a really good option here, because this is also something that is unanimous between all the developers community. They usually, as I told before, they usually prefer to be contracted under this regime of contractors because they will pay less taxes. Okay, we have a different tax regime to who opens a company in Brazil to over those that works under the employment regime. Okay, so this can be very much more attractive to the contractor that prefer doing this way. So as I said before, the contractor is a company. Okay, it's really easy today to open a company in Brazil. It's a single person company that will provide the services. In this case, you just need to be aware of the misclassification risk. As I told you before, there is a lawsuit risk here. But like I told you before, it's something that usually the developers and the tech people in Brazil, they don't open lawsuits against the company, okay? Because they don't want to be like, I don't know how to explain this, but this can be bad for the next company, you know, about recommendations. If they need a recommendation from the previous company say, oh, don't hire this one because he opened a lawsuit against me. So they just don't do it, okay? It's like a legal ethical code between tech people in Brazil. They usually don't open lawsuits. Okay.
Yeah, and I think Tiago, one of the other points is if they're a contractor, they have access to USD, which they probably want, right? So
exactly.
If they want to keep being a contractor in many cases, my big takeaway is don't force a square peg in a round hole. If you're setting up an entity, make sure you do things the right way. But would love to hear more about the clauses on the tax obligations and making sure the taxes are paid out. This is something my clients ask me frequently. Exactly what do I have to provide to the Brazilian government for me, the client that's hiring the contractor to be compliant, but also what should they be doing to be compliant?
Yes, so perfect. That's it. Look, so there are some things that we need to be aware of when we are hiring contractors in Brazil. The company needs to add clauses in this agreement regarding the tax obligations. So especially about the responsibility. So you need to transfer the responsibility to the contractor to pay the local taxes. Okay. But you also need to make your part as a company and make sure that the taxes were paid. So make some kind of audit over these taxes, if they are paying or not the taxes. Okay. You can one good way to do this is asking for the contractor the registered invoice every month, and not just that simple invoice that you can do in an Excel or Word file. So you need to prove that this invoice was communicated to the tax office in Brazil, so you are 100% compliant with the tax law. Okay, so what we in this document, I will bring in the next slide a photo about this, what we call NFSE. Okay, so this is an NFSE, as I'm saying. This is an invoice. This is how an invoice that is registered in the Brazilian tax office should look like. Okay, so this is what you should receive from your contractor. And if you receive something like this, you can guarantee that the taxes were at least communicated to the tax office. If they will pay or not is not your problem, okay? But the invoice and the government, the Brazilian government, is knowing every month that the contractor is receiving this money every month, and this is the big deal. This is what really matters, okay? Another thing that you should be aware of is what we call the CNPJ, which is in the next slide. It's a card. It's like it's this one with the Brazilian logo, and this company. This is the company registration. Okay, this is what we call the CNPJ card, which guarantees you that the company really exists and is not something that he's just saying that it's fake. You just guarantee that it really exists. So that's it. You should also. This is one of the main documents, the big important documents that you need to receive from your contractor when you are hiring him and when you're contracting him, when you are signing the agreement with him, is ask for this contractor registration, and this is how this contractor registration should look like. Okay. Also, so to finish here my thoughts, it's good to know that Brazil has strict labor laws, like as we said here, as we saw here, that are very similar to France. And if you hire contractors in Brazil, we highly recommend moving them to EOR after 18, 24 months to reduce any risk regarding labor laws, lawsuits, and these kind of things, as we're saying.
Excellent. Thank you, Tiago, for that. So I'm taking away from that the contractors might be more straightforward than employees, a lot more straightforward, but there's still some hoops that folks need to jump through, like getting the CMPJ proof, like making sure that the invoices are being registered through the CFS or the NFSE, and then making sure the folks are paying their taxes. So excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, we're about to hop into the Deel platform itself. We're going to effectively walk through one workflow, which is, a couple workflows, which is number one, how do I hire someone through the Deel platform? We're going to talk about contractors just to make it easy. But number two is how am I able to then pay them, and what does the invoice look like? And how do I make sure they can upload their CMPJ and all that good stuff? So to quickly orient you to the screen, this is the Deel dashboard. When you log in to app.letsdeel.com, this is what is shown. I first just click on create a contract. Now in my sample, we're going to use a fixed rate developer contract. So I, am hiring a software developer. The contract name is going to be for Jose Smith. He lives in Brazil and specifically lives in Alagoas. And he is going to be for software developer. You can put in whatever the title might be. This is the one we'll use for now. And he has a couple years of experience. Now we can put in the scope of work. Deel pre-populates some. You could certainly save it and reuse it in the future or use your own. And when the start date is for the contractor. So in this case, we'll say that he's starting, Monday the 15th. I select next. And now I can see that real-time market rate insights that we were discussing earlier. So I can quickly see that mid-level software developers, so software developers that have that title and a few years experience, here's what they're seeing in an annual payment in USD in Brazil. I can also see what it looks like in monthly. So again, my payment frequency is monthly. I want to come in somewhere above median. So let's say I do 6,000. Just for random round numbers, I can now update the invoicing. So in the invoice cycle, whenever it ends, to meet the rest of my invoice cycle and integrate over with NetSuite or QuickBooks. That's going to be our first payment date. If I need to throw in a prorated first payment. And now we can add in fun things. So termination dates. To Tiago's point, you can't have somebody indefinitely employed or hired, as a contractor. You want an end date on that agreement. Otherwise, there could be misinterpretation of whether that's actually a contractor agreement or not. So you can certainly add in a termination date. And let's say in this case, I'm going to advance to June 1st. It's only for a couple months that I'm going to be hiring this person. I can change the days of notice. We can help you communicate your stock options offer, attach additional documents, or even special clauses. And now this is where the rubber meets the road. I want to make sure they upload their CMPJ there, but also I'm going to use Deel's contract because we have locally approved, legally reviewed, compliant contracts that have those clauses about whose responsibility it is to pay taxes, for example. And Deel Premium if you're worried about the risk, Deel Premium can warrant you against misclassification risk up to $25,000 on the contract. So that's all it takes. I review and sign, and now we have an agreement that's been reviewed and approved for use in Brazil. So if I come in and search Brazil, it talks about the LGPD, right? The privacy law. So this has been reviewed by local attorneys. You are safe to sign here. And now we can invite the contractor just with putting in their email and sending a message. That's how easy it is to hire somebody directly in Brazil as a contractor. Now, the middle of the month stuff, or let's talk about onboarding. That was something that Tiago mentioned. You can't just work with contractors, right? You need to see that they have registered to be a contractor and all these other things. So I have all of my contractors here. I can see whether they've uploaded their documents or not. So Woodrow in Sweden, you need to register with FTax with the Swedish tax agency and provide your passport. Whereas Tony in Israel needs to be showing these 4 documents. So we will show you specifically for Brazil what is required, and your contractor can upload it on their end securely and privately in compliance with LGPD accords. Finally, it's time to make payment. The invoice automatically generated. Again, they need that invoice automatically generates. They can then take that data and go fill out their NFSE form. And now I'm ready to make payment. It's very straightforward. I come in, click pay. I don't want to pay all teams. I just want to pay my contractor team right now. I'm paying some folks in USD, one in euros, one in rupees, British pounds. We're paying a bunch of different people in a bunch of different currencies. I select the account I want to fund from and then confirm payment. My entire team of contractors across 6 different currencies just got paid in 3 clicks. So that's how we handle it from Deel: hiring, making sure that they're legally allowed to work, getting a compliant agreement, making sure you have an invoice, so month to month you're compliant there, and finally getting the funds to them securely. On their side, they could certainly go in and they have a login on the contractor side where they can balance their funds and whatnot. But that's basically what it looks like from the company side from Deel, how easy it is to get started. So, all right, now that I give my monologue, we'll open it up for questions and answers. Is there anybody that has questions and answers here? And this can come from Tiago or Ezekiel as well, if y'all have any comments. All right, excellent. So looks like we have no questions or answers coming in yet. The good news is you would be able to connect with Ezekiel, Tiago, Cristiano, myself after this stream. Should you need to, find us on LinkedIn and our various spots. We appreciate everybody's time today. It's been great to be able to chat with that. Oh, great. We have a question for Ezekiel from Talene. So is there any watch out about Brazilian talent? We've heard about how to do it. We've heard about why to do it, but why not Brazilian talent?
So going on everything we said and I talked about, and maybe Tiago, I would say the 2 biggest ones, I think, again, is English proficiency. If that's the number 1 by far, it's not the number 1 country in LATAM, but definitely is growing and being much better. And the second one is probably more related to what Tiago said. So be sure that you have really strong labor laws. So be sure you are coping with everything you have to do in terms of compliance, in terms of classification. Hire someone like Tiago who really knows what he's doing. Do your things via Deel, or if you are going to set up your company and everything, be sure you know what you're doing and do it well, because again, laws are much more strict than in the US or other countries where you have more let's call it flexible labor laws. So those are probably the 2 biggest ones, but for everything else, it's whatever you need.
Yeah, and one thing I would jump in there as well is there are other locations across Latin America that, while they don't have the total talent that Brazil does, places like, for example, Paraguay has a lower cost to employ somebody. So in Brazil, that cost is, maybe 40%, whereas in other locations, Peru, Chile, Paraguay, it can be lower. So just as you think about overhead, competition, talent, there are what the government charges for an employee that to consider as well. And like we had another question in here, what is the specialty of Brazilian talent? If there's one that you could say this is really where, or particular pools within Brazil, what would you say the specialties are?
Yes, so from our data and what we see on the platform, I would say definitely, as I showed in my slide, you have the biggest Java community in the world in terms of size. You have definitely a really big pool for IT and sales. I would say those are the biggest ones we usually see.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, on the employer of record side, it's very common to hire salespeople through that method because folks want to try out a market, right? And so, to Ezekiel's point, a lot of folks have been interested in trying out the Brazilian market or hiring folks to expand into the Brazilian market. And so, both sales and customer support are actually very, very common. Excellent. I don't think we had any other questions come through. Let me see. Specialty of Brazilian talent. Hey, Mayim, appreciate the comments there. Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone for joining. This will also be recorded, so you can access the recording that will be emailed. It's been great to host Tiago, Ezekiel, and Cristiano. I appreciate all of y'all's comments. Have a great weekend.